So everybody, Pokémon Z is officially announced, around 10 years after it was anticipated, and it comes in the form of a Legends game, with this very interesting title format. I think it's fair to say the Pokémon Company have completely subverted everybody's expectations with this announcement, and the teaser trailer they debuted in the Pokémon Presents stream is certainly unique. So in today's video, we're going to take a closer look at 5 mysteries that have emerged about Game Freak's upcoming main series Pokémon game, Pokémon ZA. Wow, that feels weird to say. So let's start with a wider point. This game was announced for Nintendo Switch systems, but they showed no gameplay at all. On the Nintendo side, this obviously isn't usual practice for Nintendo games, but on the Pokémon side, this could be for a few reasons. But the most exciting option for all of us would be that they weren't allowed to show us any gameplay because Nintendo said so. But why wouldn't Nintendo allow this? Well, because if this game is made for a new Switch model, showing gameplay could reveal details like the resolution, frame rate, or the general graphical power of the system. And Nintendo are not going to let that information come out officially for the first time in a Pokémon stream. They'll want to announce that themselves through a Nintendo Direct. But why would this be the most exciting option? Well, because it would essentially confirm that the rumoured Switch console, which was recently delayed until 2025, is probably exactly that, a new Switch console under the Switch name. Maybe Switch 2, Switch Pro, but not a new system. And Pokémon ZA could be a launch title, utilising the new system's power. Now, whilst that's the most interesting option, there is also the possibility that the Pokémon Company simply wanted to avoid getting swamped with opinions on an unfinished game. We know how fickle the Pokémon community can be on social media. But then again, also maybe it just doesn't look as good as they want it to look yet, or they just want to build a sense of mystery at this point to build that excitement through what will be a relatively long hype season. Future and past concept. The teaser trailer we got was sort of really weird. You had these futuristic Tron Legacy looking parts juxtaposed with these classic Legends style hand-drawn parts, and they even make a point in some places of fading one into the other. So what time period is this game taking place in? Now, importantly, the concept seems to revolve around renovating Lumio City to be a place where Pokemon and people live in harmony. It's kind of similar to the player's role in Jubilife Village in Legends Arceus, where we had to make the residents less skeptical of Pokemon, and by the end of the main story, we were pretty successful. But the Lumiose that we know and love from X and Y already has harmony between people and Pokemon. The trailer itself even shows that, so maybe our mission this time is to ensure the sacred timeline in the X and Y present happens, affecting it from another time period and ensuring that the vision mentioned in the trailer happens. Maybe the game is set in the past and our player has visions of the ideal future, maybe assisted by a Pokemon. Maybe the futuristic visuals are just a depiction of the X and Y present day from the perspective of the past. Or maybe something goes wrong as we try to develop Lumiose and we get sent further forward than intended. This also could explain why Unova and Johto remakes didn't happen yet. Real-life Paris is very much a multicultural city, and so it might make sense to sail or fly to other parts of other regions to spread the word about the urban development project as part of the story. The possibilities are endless. I just hope somehow the Ghost Girl has something to do with it. Pokemon, please pay this off. Unown could have something to do with this. Unown is slyly one of the Pokemon Company's most long-standing and elusive mystery Pokemon, and that's kind of its point. It's literally in the name. They've been building suspense with Unown for a while now, and it somehow seems fundamental to the Pokemon multiverse. But there's not really an official explanation for what it is. If you were lucky enough to play Gen 2 when it first came out, you'll know that entering the ruins of Alph, hearing that hard-hitting theme, and then discovering Wild Unknown in the chambers created this enormous sense of intrigue. It was utterly captivating, and it made you want to find out more. All you had were these small Pokédex entries. Around that time, Unown also featured in the Entei Pokémon movie in 2000, and beyond that, it's since been used in both playful ways and in more serious, lore-centric ways. More recently, in Legends Arceus, you could find them hidden throughout the map, and finding all of them would eventually lead to an Unown playground in the Solaceon ruins. In the Presents, Unown was used as a teaser between announcements. As you probably know, each Unown represents a letter of the English alphabet, plus a couple of punctuation unknowns. So in the recent presents, the Pokemon Company used it quite simply to spell things out. Now, as I mentioned, Unown debuted as a Johto Pokemon, and believe me, they knew that people were expecting Johto, so this was kind of a fun way to throw us off the Kalos scent, and I certainly fell for the bait. And don't get me wrong, it could have been just that, bait. But beyond being introduced in Johto, the bigger picture is that Unown is fiercely connected to legendary Pokemon in general, and it always seems to appear along with some sort of legendary context. So maybe appearing in the Legends game series is sort of exactly the point. Also consider the game title itself, ZA. It may be backwards, but isn't it funny that Unown forms represent the letters A to Z? Pokemon consciously chose to use it on Pokemon Day for a stream that would eventually reveal Legend ZA, and that it always appears around legendaries. Again, possibly a coincidence, but also possibly not. Pokédex entries of Unown over the course of the 9 generations seem to allude to Unown having a telepathic power to communicate with each other, and also that they gain some sort of special power when 2 or more are together. They seem to congregate in areas where legendaries live or are worshipped. Maybe Unown in their numbers are avatars or angels of Arceus and give legendary Pokemon their boosted power. Unown also learns Hidden Power, which is actually the only move it can learn. Hidden Power is a special move that nearly all Pokemon can learn, and it takes on a random typing for each Pokemon that learns it, determined by its IVs. So perhaps with this in mind, an alternative explanation is that Unown helps form the typings of Pokemon in the Pokemon universe. Maybe it's even linked to Terapagos in some way. The possibilities are numerous, but will Unown assist in the ZA story in some way? Will it become another, stronger Pokemon when you collect them all? Maybe it will even get its own Legends Unown title down the line. But almost certainly, it feels like Unown will have a part to play in Legends ZA. No ILCA title. 2021 marked new territory for the main series Pokemon games. When the Gen 4 Remakes trailer dropped, it was revealed that Game Freak, for the first time ever, had passed the Diamond and Pearl Faithful remakes over to a third-party developer. ILCA was that developer, and since then, it's been fair to assume that Pokemon might trust ILCA or another developer to produce faithful remakes again. After all, since we discovered that Game Freak worked on Legends Arceus and ILCA worked on BDSP, but that they would be released pretty much at the same time, from that point it felt like they had set up a new standard. Surely from that point forward, every time an older generation was due to be remade, we would now receive 2 games. 1, a faithful remake with modern graphics, and 2, a Legends or original project using the lore from that particular generation and perhaps expanding on it. But the latest announcement may have shattered the pattern we thought was emerging. 2 games for each remake season may not be the new norm. And to be honest, I'm at least glad they subverted expectations like this, because the amount of comments I see online swearing by these patterns was starting to become a little bit culty. Essentially, Game Freak would never prioritise a historical pattern for the sake of it and pass up an opportunity to just simply make the best business decision or go with the best game idea at the time. With that being said, the numerical patterns have, up until a few days ago, provided some sort of context as to what generation we can expect to see next. And that's been true from the first faithful remakes, Fire Red and Leaf Green in 2004. So this begs the question, did Pokemon purposefully not announce a faithful remake, but they really are working on something in the background through ILCA or another developer? Now I've given this some thought, and there are a few reasons why this would make sense. Firstly, we live in an era of social media. Pokemon will be more than aware of the widespread criticisms of BDSP and, more recently, the criticisms of the visuals of their first Gen 9 titles, Scarlet and Violet. Social media, as we all know, has the capacity to stir and exaggerate things, and sometimes this can actually be a good thing, like in the case of the first Sonic movie trailer, when Sonic looked like this, and ruling out an elaborate publicity hoax, backlash forced them to fix how Sonic looked. But when the BDSP trailer dropped and there was this huge backlash at the chibi graphics, and possibly rightfully so, it will have been pretty negative publicity for the casual fans. Pokemon will know that, and they may not want that sort of negativity around remakes on them again, especially when it's a faithful remake that's so close to people's hearts. So with 2024 being a gap year for main series Pokemon releases, it's very possible that their strategy might be to just suddenly drop a remake for Johto, Unova, or even Kalos, because apparently that's where we're at. Dropping it out of nowhere, even if it was a chibi-like version, could be a great strategy to influence people's perception of the games. If we had 6 months to all mock how it looks, it could be bad for the Pokemon company. If they drop something out of practically nowhere, it's the equivalent of finding an extra Christmas present that was hidden behind the tree. The attitude around it will largely be, wow, this is a bonus, you're spoiling us, not look how stupid it looks. So in conclusion, don't rule out a faithful remake or something similar to suddenly drop later in the year, developed by another company. You never know, it might happen. Zygarde may have a counterpart. Zygarde is the third Pokemon in the X, Y, and Z trio. And with this game effectively being Pokemon Z, this is Zygarde's time to shine. Finally, in the trailer, the Z appears stylized with the Zygarde hexagons. But look what happens when the A appears. It's still green, but it's stylized with another different pattern entirely, which looks like it could be leaves or even scales. So even though Zygarde, Xerneas and Yveltal appear to be a trio, maybe it's really a quartet. You see a lot of people considering Dialga, Palkia and Giratina to be a trio, but really they're part of a quartet with Arceus as well. And literally in the last Legends game, they transformed another classic trio into a quartet, introducing Enamorus into the Forces of Nature group of legendaries. If Xerneas and Yveltal represent opposite concepts of life and death, and Zygarde represents order, perhaps the fourth Pokemon would then represent the opposite of order, which is chaos. That's a Pokemon I'd like to see. Now they've introduced playing as a Pokemon as a thing now, so wouldn't it be cool to face off against the Chaos Pokemon playing as complete form Zygarde? But before we get carried away, there is a counterpoint to this argument. If this Pokemon's name begins with A, it's fair to say that A doesn't necessarily match with X, Y and Z as letters for a quartet. So maybe instead of a quartet theory, perhaps in another time there was an A, B and C Pokemon which had a feud with the X, Y and Z Pokemon. Maybe this is an element of the 3,000-year-old war. Again, the possibilities are numerous, but let me know in the comments what you think about all of these points and subscribe for more speculation content like this. I'll also see you in my streams on Tuesday and Friday evenings. Until next time, love you gang.